So our next speaker is Tianchen He, who's going to talk on triggering the radiation of early animals.
Thank you. Following this talk, I'm going to show you another example of both biological and environmental innovation toward the modern habitable Earth. And the event I'm going to talk about is the first radiation of early marine animals, also well known as the Cambrian explosion. So as a start, I feel obliged to take you through the history of early Earth and its life for the first 4 billion years before the Cambrian explosion happened. So unlike the modern ecosystem, which is habitable, vigorous, with the breathable air and full of life, the ancient world was almost barren. It was hot and with a significant lower oxygen level in atmosphere and ocean. There were no microscopic animals, but the most developed organism was living in oceans. And the most common one, these layered microbial structure called the stromatolite, and especially made from the photosynthetic cyanobacteria, which can produce oxygen. And they're still forming in the modern environments, such as the Shark Bay of Western Australia. So this geological timescale marks most of the very significant biological events of the early Earth. As we already know, the Earth formed about 4.6 billion years ago, and we start to have the first evidence of life appeared as early as 3.8 billion years ago. But it took more than 3 billion years to evolve from single cell to eukaryotes to multicellular life, and finally we have the first animal emergence in the fossil record about 550 million years ago, at the beginning of a geological period called the Cambrian. And it was event over more than 20 million years, and at this moment there was an explosion, or you can say a rapid evolution of marine animals. And these animals later gave rise to most diversity of animal life that now still exists on Earth. So the Cambrian period lasted about, totally 56 million years ago. It is bracketed by Ediacaran period and Ordovician period. And this Cambrian period was first established by the famous British geologist Adam Sedgwick, who named it after Cambria, which is a Latinous name for Wales. The young Charles Darwin even worked as assistant with Adam Sedgwick, and he was among one of the first explorers to study the Cambrian rock in North Wales. And the interesting part of this story is that it was at this moment that Darwin acquired the field geology knowledge before he went to the famous Beagle voyage only 4 months later. So thanks to the Cambrian explosion, the Cambrian rocks preserve one of the most exciting fossil records for the study of paleontology and evolutionary biology. These are some of my favorite Cambrian marine predators from the Canadian British Shale, dated back to 505 million years ago. And we have these animals are from the famous Chinese Zhenjiang biota, which dated back to 520 million years ago. And these fossil record includes some sort of so-called first fish or first shrimp, which for the first time developed the distinct head and tail. But the number one dominant animal in the Cambrian Ocean was this group of arthropod called trilobite, and the present-day living horseshoe crab is their direct descendant. So these Cambrian animals is very important because they are the first representative of animals that we humans can confidently call our ancestors. This is a divergence tree of animals The blue and yellow bar here illustrate the growth rate of abundance and diversity of animals since the Cambrian explosion from the earliest Cambrian period. So a few facts we can deduce from this diagram. The first, the radiation of early animals was a rapid event in a short period of late Ediacan to early Cambrian period. But both the genetic and morphologically diversification was in rather episodic and step-by-step fashion. And these animals comprise the first bilaterally symmetric animal, like the human bilaterally symmetric animal with mirrored both sides. And another biological innovation is that the first emergence of segmented animals with limbs, antennae, shells, and external skeleton, like the trilobite I just showed you. But of the most importance is that this event, this Cambrian explosion, facilitated the first appearance of nearly all modern animal forms. But this raises the question, is there any animal ancestral connection in the older period, before the Cambrian? So this question puzzled Darwin 160 years ago as well. So, because at that time people failed to find any evidence of prior ancestral life form in the older rock before the Cambrian. And this actually contradicted with Darwin's theory of evolution as he predicted. But as he emphasized in his famous book on the origin of species, he refused the argument that metamorphism or alteration of older rocks is the cause of a very rare fossil discovery in the older rock. And he hoped that time and modern research would find evidence that was lacking. Well, Darwin was right. So in order to understand this, we need to go further back to a geological period called Ediacan, which preceded the Cambrian period. And now we know in the Ediacan Ocean, we already see a great diversity of life, including the multicellular algae. And some very recent research suggests that the even discovery of the oldest tiny sponge animal and animal embryos, like animal eggs, dated back to 600 million years ago. And we have these younger, leaf-like microfossils, such as this Dickinsonia and Chania. Chania was first found in England. And these Ediacan complex fossils represent the first microscopic and also the morphologically complex life form in the geological history. But more importantly, as you can see, some of these complex organisms already developed into bilaterally symmetric body plan. So this suggests a possible ancestral connection with the Cambrian bilateral animals. But others refuse this argument because there's no modern living animals that is identical to these Ediacan ones. And the entire soft-bodied Ediacan, these fossils went extinct at the Ediacan Cambrian boundary around 542 million years ago, and replaced entirely by the Cambrian life forms. However, a very recent study from last month suggests that it was rather a gradually replacement than a sudden extinction event, with the evidence that the co-occurrence of both Ediacan type and Cambrian type skeletal fossils, because in the Ediacan period we used to think that there was no skeleton fossils, and including some of the small shelly fossils in the rocks in the late Ediacan period. The small shelly fossils represent some of the skeleton, the first skeleton remains of very small animals such as snake-like mollusks. So this discovery really suggests there's no distinct separation between the Ediacan type and the Cambrian type life forms, and it is more likely that the Cambrian explosion here has a deep rooting relationship into the Ediacan period. So a number of theories have been proposed to to explain the causes for Cambrian explosion. But broadly speaking, it includes genetic development innovation, some biological innovation and ecological feedbacks, and a development of a permissive or friendly environment for the emergence of animal. So geneticists proposed that the expansion and the diversification of a group of genes called Hox genes are really responsible for the diversification of early animal body plans. So the Hox genes control the organ's development. So for example, if a certain Hox gene is expressed, a certain region on the body will develop into a limb, for example. But if the different Hox gene is expressed, this region will develop into an eye or antenna instead. So this beautiful lady is from the China Zhenjiang biota. Her name is Cinderella, and as you can already see, she already developed a very beautiful eye, antenna, and limbs back to 520 million years ago. However, the molecular biology clock predicted that, this is all based on prediction, that the genetic development system for the bilateral animal was already established in the geological period Quaternion, which is before the Ediacaran and Cambrian period. But this is 100 million years before the actual divergence of animals and in the Cambrian fossil records. So this suggests a possible evolutionary lag or delay for the emergence of bilateral animal. So other factors such as the influence of physical environment change would contribute to such delay. So arms race. Arms race was a term to describe the military race between the superpowers. And here we apply the same term to describe the first establishment of a relationship between the predators and prey. So the Ediacaran Ocean was quite a calm ocean, and so with very little predation activities. And most of these creatures were soft-bodied. They mainly feed by grazing slowly or absorbing nutrients on the seafloor, or simply filtering the seawater. But in the Cambrian Ocean, it's more violent, with a huge increase of predation intensity. For example, the first appearance of shell-crushing behavior. So this development really changed the living habit and feeding type for this the entire ecosystem, and it could be so both sides were fighting to each other to survive, and it forced them to adapt to each other and evolve rapidly and simultaneously to survive. So this could be a driving force for the animal diversification in the Cambrian Ocean. The relationship between the predators and the prey can also change dramatically when the first introduction of eyesight in the Cambrian Ocean. So in the Ediacaran Ocean, all the creatures were feeding blindly, but in the Cambrian, the fossil record suggests that nearly all Cambrian animals have possessed the highly developed vision system. So with the better vision, the marine hunter or scavenger can see the prey and their food in a relatively longer distance and catch more efficiently. So although this development of such function cannot explain the Cambrian explosion, but it will certainly accelerate the rate of biological and ecological changes. So all those advantages from the predators would also in part force the prey to adapt and arm themselves for defense. So as a result, the soft-bodied animals for the first time developed the ability to utilize a range of materials dissolved in the seawater, such as calcium phosphate and calcium carbonate and silica, for the construction of their strong shell and skeleton for protection. So this is because the calcium is very abundant in seawater, and this skeleton might simply evolve because it is cheaper and also stronger to produce than the normal organic-based skeletons that like the modern insects have. So apart from this defensive function, the strong skeleton will also provide support to the soft body and mobility such as swimming and feeding functions such as digging on the surface of the seafloor. So this leads to another ecological innovation called Cambrian substrate revolution. So it describes a transition to intense animal boring or digging on the surface of the seafloor in the Cambrian Ocean. So in the Ediacaran Ocean, so most of these bottom-dwelling organisms were grazing on these green microbial mats. So these microbial mats cause a kind of barrier between the water and the sediments, which leave the underneath sediments lacking oxygen and toxic with sulfide because the presence of sulfur-reducing bacteria. But in the Cambrian, the animals for the first time developed the ability to plunge or dig deep into the sediments, and this behavior kind of break down the microbial mass, the barrier, and lose the sediments and increase the food sources used to be buried, and more importantly, it enabled the oxygen to penetrate the upper layer of the seafloor, which kind of expand the habitable living spaces for animals. So apart from all this biological and ecological innovation, external environment trigger is also crucial here to provide a friendly or permissive environment for the emergence of animals. So in a long-term sense, towards the Cambrian explosion, the Earth's atmosphere was stabilizing. The ozone layer was developed as a shield to shield from the UV radiation, which is fatal to life. And besides, the Earth's surface and ocean were cooling down sufficiently to permit the life to exist and animal later to survive. But the more closely related environment event is called the Snowball Earth. So before the Ediacaran and Cambrian radiation, the Earth suffered a very extreme cold climate, which resulted in 2 global glaciations, with ice sheets even extended to the equator, making the Earth look like a snowball. But when the CO2 emission and the greenhouse condition exceeded the ice albedo effect, the Snowball Earth rapidly melted down, and this has a huge impact on the physical environment change by creating a more habitable ocean for the following radiations. But in the meantime, the high riverine input flux would deliver abundant life-bearing nutrients such as phosphorus, which can in part increase the rate of marine primary productivity. So the enhanced productivity and the associated growth of photosynthetic algae would produce more atmospheric oxygen, which is vital to the oxygen-breathing animals. On the other hand, the Snowball Earth itself was a catastrophic event. So it could cause the collapse or shutdown of the biological world before the Snowball Earth. And this event can also explain why there's an evolutionary delay of bilateral animals between the Cryogenian period and the actual divergence of animal in the Cambrian. So oxygen availability is another very, very important environmental factor, because it's quite obvious that all the aerobic organisms, including those Cambrian animals, would require sufficient oxygen to breathe and for their intense metabolism. And also larger body size and costly activities such as predation would consume a great amount of oxygen. But as we already know, the early Earth was quite low in oxygen. but it underwent two-stage oxygenation. But only after the Snowball Earth, we have this second pulse of oxygenation, and it finally rose close to the modern oxygen level, just around the early Cambrian period. So with sufficient oxygen finally established in the system, the animal burst and diversified. So another theory is that the minerals for animal skeletonization or bimineralization became increasingly available in the Cambrian Ocean due to the post-Snowball Earth erosion or weathering. So here is a paleogeography map for the Cambrian period. But unlike the present-day Earth, the continents were relatively separated. There was a supercontinent called Gondwana. So England and Wales was here, but Scotland was at that time separated across Arctic Ocean at the margin of a smaller continent called Laurentia. So this is northern Scotland, sorry. But what matters here is that in the early Cambrian period, there was a significant long-term sea level rise, which flooded many areas of these continents. And the assemblage of this supercontinent Gondwana across a chain of uplifted mountains, which resulted in enhanced erosion on the mountains and these mountains and flooded continents. And this will result in a significant increase of riverine input flux of calcium and other nutrients into the ocean. Accordingly, the increased seawater calcium concentration would therefore facilitate the calcium bimineralization for the construction of animals' skeletons and hard shells. So in summary, the Cambrian explosion was a consequence of the complex interaction of several abiotic and biotic processes. But my own understanding is that you need to have a genetic building block waiting there in the first place. Then a good permissive environment kicked in with sufficient oxygen, minerals and nutrients to provide a habitable volume, and finally opportunity for the animals. Then interaction within the biosphere associated with other ecological and environmental feedback really drive this system to work very fast into a kind of runaway situation to facilitate this very rapid fashion of diversification. So, although the triggers of the Cambrian explosion is far from resolved, but the true significance here is that the Homo sapiens, or human beings, wouldn't be here if the Cambrian explosion didn't happen 530 million years ago. Thank you very much.
Time for a few questions before drinks. So why was the molecular clock predicted to be so far back? Presumably the molecular clock must have run much faster in the Cambrian period.
I think this is the other way around. We calculate based on the maturation rate and genetic pattern, but we find out the actual timing from molecular clock is actually in the Permian period, which is before the Cambrian explosion. So we need to find a mechanism to expand this. So Snowball Earth is a really good idea.
Okay, if there are no further questions, do come outside for a glass of wine, and we resume again in about half an hour with Professor Andy Clark. Really good.
Yes,
which is error plus minus 7,000%. Yeah, so what are you actually doing with your homework?
chemistry. I still
spent on explanation weathering history of early Cambrian. I didn't do the argument associate these accounts of solutions. We have lots of new discovery.
It's how that mileage mechanical cycle changes. It's always annoying because the rocks are so dodgy by then that it's really hard to work out what's actually going on.
You can't go drank.